My name is Mike Reynolds, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm 36 years old, a small business owner, and someone who thought he understood life and love until I met Lizette. I met her on a dating site 3 years ago. She was beautiful, sweet, and had a vulnerability that drew me in. She told me she was from Mexico, trying to build a better life in the U.S. Her green eyes, soft smile, and her accent were magnetic. I thought I had found someone special. Little did I know, I was walking right into a nightmare. Lizette was 31 at the time, and as we got closer, she started opening up about her struggles. She was undocumented, she said, and was living in constant fear of being deported. She'd grown up in poverty in Mexico, and I could feel the weight of her story. I thought I could be her hero. After just a few months, Lizette tearfully confessed that her visa had expired, and she was at risk of being sent back. She was scared, lost, and didn't know what to do. That's when I made the fateful decision. I proposed. I told myself it was love, that I was protecting her, saving her from an unjust system. Looking back now, I see how blind I was. We got married in a small ceremony. My family was hesitant, they barely knew her, but I was all in. For 2 years, we lived together, and everything seemed fine. Lizette worked a few jobs here and there, sending money back home to help her parents. I didn't think much of it. She said it was common for immigrants to send money to their families. I respected that. I admired her dedication. But there were signs, things I ignored. She spent a lot of time on her phone, speaking Spanish to people I didn't know. When I'd ask, she'd tell me it was family, cousins, aunts, old friends from Mexico. I wanted to trust her, and for a long time, I did. Until one day, everything came crashing down. It was a Saturday afternoon. I had come home early from a job, and the house was quiet, too quiet. Lizette wasn't there, and her phone was sitting on the counter. For the first time in our marriage, I felt an impulse to check it. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was the odd way she had been acting recently, but I unlocked her phone and started going through her messages. That's when I saw it. Text with someone named Carlos. Messages in Spanish that I barely understood. I copied them and used a translation app. The things I read made my stomach turn. Carlos wasn't just some friend. He was her husband. They had children together too. In fact, she wasn't sending money to her parents. She was sending it to her family, the one she had hidden from me for 2 years. She and Carlos had been orchestrating this scam for months, using me as their ticket to financial stability in the U.S. She'd play the loving wife while funneling the money I earned to her real family back in Mexico. The more I dug, the worse it got. Lizette and Carlos had been laughing at me, calling me a fool in their messages. She wrote about how easy it was to trick me, how I'd saved her from deportation without knowing the truth. The lies went so deep, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had sacrificed so much for her, and she had played me like a puppet. But instead of confronting her right away, I decided to get my revenge. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. I wanted to be sure of everything before I acted. Within a week, I had proof, photos, texts, everything. Lizette had been meeting Carlos in secret, not just here in Phoenix but in nearby towns. They had a full-on relationship while I was at work, thinking I was supporting my wife's dream of a better life. They thought they were untouchable. I spent days planning my next move, each step feeling more like a chess game than an emotional outburst. I knew if I acted too soon, I'd lose my chance at total revenge. Patience was key. I went through our finances quietly, moving my money out of shared accounts. I stopped paying for anything in her name and started preparing for what would come next. The day I was ready to confront her, I acted as though nothing had changed. Lizette came home, smiling, acting as if everything was normal. It was hard to hide the anger burning inside me, but I needed her to be caught off guard. When she walked in, I was sitting at the table with a stack of papers in front of me. I didn't say a word when she came in. I just handed her the stack of papers, the photos, the text translations, the documents from the PI. Her smile vanished the moment she saw them. Her face went pale. "Mike, I can explain," she stammered, but I cut her off. "Explain what? That you've been married this whole time? That you have kids with Carlos? That you've been sending money to him and lying to me for years?" She tried to speak, but no words came out. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. I had seen the real Lizette, the woman who had deceived me, who had used me like a pawn in her little game. She started with her sob story, saying Carlos had forced her into it, that she didn't want to hurt me, that she didn't know what else to do. But I didn't care. Do you think I'm that stupid? You've been playing me this whole time. Do you even love me, Lizette? Or was this all just a scam from the start? I demanded. She collapsed into a chair, her hands trembling as she reached for me. I do love you, Mike. Please. I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to be like this. Her words felt hollow, meaningless. I had sacrificed everything for her, and all I could see now was the betrayal. I wasn't going to let her twist the narrative. I had the upper hand now, and there was no way I was letting go of it. Save your tears, Lizette. You're not the victim here. I was nothing but good to you, and you used me. I stood up, staring her down as she sat frozen, still holding the evidence of her lies in her trembling hands. I'm filing for divorce. And not just that, I said coldly. I've already reported you and Carlos to immigration. Your little scam is over. The shock in her eyes was almost satisfying. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. She had counted on me being too blinded by love to ever retaliate, but she had underestimated me. Mike, please, don't do this, she begged, standing up and reaching for me again. We can fix this. I'll leave Carlos. I'll be the wife you deserve, I swear it. Her desperation was almost laughable. It's too late for that, I said, stepping back. You had your chance, and you blew it. Now you're going to face the consequences. I left the house that night, letting her wallow in her panic. She had no idea what was coming, but I knew the storm I had set in motion would be impossible for her to escape. The next few days were a whirlwind. I contacted my lawyer and had the divorce papers drawn up immediately. Meanwhile, I handed over all the evidence to immigration. With Carlos and Lizette both being undocumented, I knew their scam was about to crumble fast. Lizette tried calling me over and over again, leaving tearful voicemails and texts begging for forgiveness. She promised to explain everything, to make it right, but I didn't listen. I blocked her on every platform, letting her spiral in her own mess. I wasn't her savior anymore, and I certainly wasn't her fool. The investigator had uncovered even more dirt than I expected. Not only was she funneling money to Carlos, but she was also connected to a network of people running similar schemes. Lizette had married me with one goal: to secure her status here by any means necessary, and I had been her perfect target. I took all this information to immigration, and they didn't hesitate to move forward. They assured me that Lizette and Carlos would be facing deportation soon, and I'd be free of their deceit for good. But I wasn't done yet. I knew she still had ties back home, family and friends who believed she was a hero for sending money. So I compiled every piece of evidence, including photos, messages, and documents, and sent them to her family in Mexico. I wanted them to know exactly how their golden daughter had achieved her so-called success. By the end of the week, everything was in motion. Divorce papers were on their way to her, and her life was falling apart as fast as she had built her web of lies. The power I felt wasn't from vengeance alone, it was the satisfaction of knowing I had taken control of my life back, something she thought I'd never do. The day Lizette received the divorce papers, I knew it because she showed up at my office in tears, completely unannounced. She was a mess, her hair disheveled, eyes swollen from crying, and clutching the stack of legal documents like they were some kind of lifeline. Mike, please, she sobbed, blocking my doorway. You can't do this. You can't just throw me away like this. Throw you away? I asked, incredulous. You've been using me for years, Lizette. I'm just cleaning up the trash. Her face twisted in pain, but I felt nothing. She kept pleading, saying that Carlos was out of the picture now, that she was ready to be the wife she should have been all along. It was pathetic. Really, watching her scramble to fix something that had been broken long before I even knew it. I don't care about Carlos. This isn't about him anymore, I said, my voice calm but firm. This is about you. You're a liar and a con artist. And the sooner you realize that, the better off you'll be when you're back in Mexico. That struck a nerve. She went pale, her hands trembling. Mexico? You? You can't do that. You can't have me deported, she stammered. Watch me, I said, stepping past her. It's already done. She crumpled in the doorway, sobbing uncontrollably. But I didn't look back. I had done everything I needed to. The divorce was in motion, the authorities were handling the immigration case, and my life was finally back on track. Lizette's world was collapsing, just as she had made mine fall apart years ago. But this time, there was no saving her. The day Lizette and Carlos were detained, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was as if every lie, every manipulation, and every moment of doubt had finally been stripped away. They were gone out of my life, out of the country soon enough, and I was free. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel pity. I felt liberated. In the weeks that followed, I moved forward, slowly but surely. The divorce was finalized without any complications. Lizette never fought it, and why would she? She had no cards left to play. I cut all ties with anyone connected to her, leaving behind the remnants of a life built on lies. But my revenge wasn't just about tearing her down, it was about building myself back up. I poured my energy into my business, which was thriving more than ever. I reconnected with old friends, started taking care of myself again, and even joined a hiking group, a hobby I'd neglected for years. One evening, after a particularly grueling hike, I found myself at the top of a mountain, looking out at the sunset over the Phoenix desert. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. In that moment, I realized something important. Revenge isn't just about getting back at those who hurt you. It's about reclaiming your own happiness, your own freedom. Lizette and Carlos had tried to use me, to strip away my sense of worth, but they hadn't succeeded. In the end, I won not because I ruined their lives, but because I saved mine. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of closure. My life was mine again, and I was stronger for having gone through it all. Karma had caught up with Lizette and Carlos, and I had moved on. For the first time in years, I felt whole. Discover more stories. Subscribe today.